This is Rogers TV, Midland.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Southern Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce All Candidates meeting. My name is Bill Taz, and I'll be your moderator for the evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming to this very important meeting. The format will be that each candidate will do an introductory statement of 3 minutes long, and after those, they'll be asked questions. Those questions, some of which have been previously submitted, and some of which will be taken in writing from the floor. Peter Costew, President of the Chamber, and Denise Hayes will be going around with recipe cards and getting you to write questions down. So we do have some initially. Every candidate will answer the questions in a rotating order. We have a timer, Emily, and what's that sound you make, Emily? That's it. So at the end of everyone's time, you'll hear that, and each candidate should wind up their comments very shortly after they hear that sound. The candidates drew the order ahead of time, so there was no preferential treatment given with respect to order, and that's the order that they're sitting at the table at the front. And those are the introductory comments. So I think since we do have limited time, we'll start with the opening statements. Beginning with Jill Dunlop of the Conservative Party. Well, actually, I should have introduced the candidates firstly. Sorry, Jill Dunlop of the Conservative Party. Hold your applause to the end. Valerie Powell of the Green Party. Jerry Marshall of the Liberal Party. And Elizabeth Van Hout of the NDP. And thank you all for attending this evening. And we certainly look forward to hearing what you have to say. And as I said, we'll start off with the introductory comments from Jill Dunlop of the Conservatives. Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you very much. Bonjour, Anin, hello. I'm Jill Dunlop, and I'm the Progressive Conservative candidate for Simcoe North. I'd like to thank the organizers, the Southern Georgian Bay Chamber of Commerce, for putting this event together, and to the audience for taking the time from a beautiful evening to come listen to myself and the other candidates. I was born in Coldwater, and I grew up with the love of our rural Ontario. I started campaigning at the age of 5, well, not specifically for this election. You may know I come from a political family. However, you may not know it's my mother's political career that inspires me. Not only did she support my father and his career, but she recognized that she has a voice and a passion of her own. I am a faculty member at Georgian College in Orillia. I've had the opportunity to work not only in the classroom, but in the community, connecting students and employers for on-the-job experience. So while I worry about the economic environment for my own daughters, I also see the challenges for the business community and my students. As I look at the environment these students are graduating into, I embrace the opportunities and challenges to be part of a team with a vision to build Ontario back into a have province and declaring enough is enough. It is time for a change in Ontario. And I want to assure you today that under a PC government, life gets more affordable. We will put money back in your pocket. My plan is simple. It is based in rebuilding respect for the people of Ontario. It is a recognition that strong business builds a strong economy, and strong families build strong communities. We cannot afford another Liberal government. We can do better. We must do better. We need a proactive and collaborative approach to better jobs that address the skills gap and the real opportunities in front of us. We need to create partnerships between education, employers, and their communities to build successes that engage our youth, newcomers, and new businesses. And yes, this can be done with a lower tax burden and a thriving economy that includes rural Ontario. I am asking that you support Ontario's recovery, that you support me as your next MPP, and I look forward to answering your questions and concerns this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dunlop, and now we'll hear from Elizabeth Van Hout from the NDP party. Thank you.
Thank you.
Am I pronouncing your name correctly? Sorry.
I say Van Hoot, but it's whatever.
Okay, well, let's go with that. Van Hout.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Good evening. I'm so pleased to be here Thank you to the Southern Georgia Bay Chamber of Commerce for inviting, and all of you for coming out this evening. I do want to acknowledge that we are on the territory of the Anishinaabe, Wendat, and Peyton, and acknowledge that publicly. I live in Orillia. I am the very proud mother of 12-year-old twin girls who still like me, and I like them. I understand that will change shortly. I live there with my wonderful husband, Dennis. I've lived in Orillia since 2010. I'm a social worker by training and have spent the last 30 years practicing social work all across levels of people, whether they be children, adults, families, or the elderly. And I've dedicated my career to social work because I really like people and I care about people. And I could not be more happy to talk to you tonight about a platform that the NDP is proposing that can meet all of your needs. That there's something in this platform that can address every working person, every retired person, every child across this riding. We have 5 key platforms that you will hear more tonight when I address them, but our healthcare system, more importantly, our healthcare system is broken. Many of you already know that. I've been canvassing at the doors. We know that. People are waiting for surgery times. People are laying on gurneys waiting for a hospital bed. The Liberal government has flatlined hospitals across this province for the last 7 years. We have an aging population, not a good decision. We are also very proud to promote health and wellness in our community through the development of our pharmacare program and our dental program. Every single person in this province, if you do not have an existing health plan, dental or drug, we will cover that. Those 2 pieces are what we're hearing at the door from the people of Ontario, saying they're choosing between taking medications or paying their hydro. That is not a choice that anyone should have to make in 2018. This riding has been progressive conservative for 100 years. Is your life any better? Has life gotten any better? People are squeezed to the max. This platform will address the healthcare issues, childcare issues, student loans, forgiving interest rates on student loans, and our last one, and many of you know we've championed this for some time, is hydro. We plan on buying Hydro One back, and we will buy it back with a 30% reduction. I look forward to hearing your questions tonight, and I'm Elizabeth Van Hoot, NDP, and your next MPP in Queen's Park.
Thank you, Ms. Van Hoot. And now introductory comments from Valerie Powell of the Green Party.
Engaged citizens, colleagues, and chamber organizers, good day, bonjour, bonjour. I'm Valerie Powell, your Green Party candidate. In this time of political uncertainty and change, the only positive choice is green. Greens are different. Greens are global, and Greens are winning seats around the world and across Canada. And Greens are making a difference in BC, where they hold the balance of power, and in PEI. We could make a difference in Ontario. Green policies are guided by a vision that is consistent. Policy details may have to adjust to changing economic and social differences in the world and in our province, but the guiding green principles remain the same. They are ecological wisdom, social justice, participatory democracy, nonviolence, sustainability, and respect for diversity. And these core values are what drew me to the Green Party to work for today and to take responsibility for the next 7 generations. I have lived most of my life in Simcoe North. I have a degree in fine arts and a research master's of science in gerontology. I spent the past 20 years in healthcare consulting to hospitals, long-term care homes, and the community throughout Simcoe County to assist staff, family, and seniors with dementia and mental health issues. The last few years, I was based out of Waypoint Centre, and I am the seniors critic for the Green Party of Ontario and the Green Party of Canada. So seniors and all of you who are going to become seniors, these are issues that are important to you. Like me, the Green Party looks for creative yet evidence-based solutions to complex social, economic, and environmental concerns. And these are all interrelated and connected. Our policies will address climate change, social inequity, and healthcare. Greens will fight to support local business and reward businesses like your own Ciboulette AC, who pay a livable wage. We will fight to protect our water, like the billions of gallons of pure water being used to wash gravel at Waverley. We will fight to protect our farmland, to maintain the green belt and expand it. And we will fight to build a healthcare system that prevents illness as well as treating it. We will not promise to put money in your pocket, a false promise that will leave a large debt for your grandchildren. Greens are not socialists. We are eco-capitalists with a fully costed plan to lower hydro bills, to unlock affordable housing so that everyone can afford a home, and to make mental health services affordable and accessible for everyone. The status quo isn't working. I will be accountable to you. Vote for what you want, not what you don't want. On June 7th, vote Valerie Powell.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. And now we'll hear from Jerry Marshall for the Liberal Party.
Thank you very much. Hello, bonjour, Ani. I'm Jerry Marshall. I'm your Simcoe North Liberal candidate. For a little bit about me personally, I've been married to my wonderful wife, Janice, here in the front row for 44 years. We have 2 sons and, I can tell you, 5 energetic grandkids. I was blessed with a telecom career that saw me rise from a pole climbing lineman to the vice president's level. I think most of you know me in my roles as the mayor of Penetanguishene and the Simcoe County Warden. You may be unaware that I'm also the chair of the Western Wardens, which is a group that represents the interests of 3.5 million people living in 322 small town rural communities ranging from Wasago to Windsor. I'm proud of our Liberal government's investments in our area. Locally, we see Waypoint, a $500 million investment that secured 1,200 recession-proof jobs for the next 40 years. I'm proud of the new high school and health hub being built in Midland. The tens of millions of dollars invested in Penetanguishene's Main Street, waterfront, sewage treatment plant, and Champlain Road. From a tourist perspective, the back-to-back Winter Games in Orillia, the Champlain commemorations in Penetanguishene, the big yellow duck that drove millions of dollars into the local economy right here in Midland. Economic development-wise, the province has invested $90 million to deliver high-speed broadband to every home, business, and farm in our area. They delivered $8.4 million to support intermunicipal transit link that will connect all of our Simcoe North municipalities. Whereas manufacturing received an $800,000 grant to help secure jobs that stay local. Social enterprise-wise, we saw Operation Grow receive $1 million for their critical, important work in women's shelters and women's domestic violence. From his recent comments, you can tell that Doug Ford does not understand that Simcoe North is a booming economy. When we are booming, just look at the 2017 year in review comments. Midland, tens of thousands attended festivals in 2017. 15 cruise ships visited your port. Manufacturers posted more than 100 jobs. Orillia, the 5th best place in Canada to invest. Penetanguishene, $23.5 million in new home construction permits. As I read the papers and watch the news, I grow very concerned that Doug Ford does not understand small town rural Ontario. He does not understand the importance of immigration to small communities. He does not understand that economic development funding matters to our small town businesses. He does not understand the provincial path to prosperity is via our small towns, right where we are today. As a mayor and warden, I do understand our needs. We need to changes in our provincial support for our small town hospitals, for our schools, for our infrastructure, for our small town way of life. It is time to invest in small town rural Ontario in a different manner, in a manner that will result in greater job creation, more affordable communities. My intent is to accomplish all this by introducing a Small Town Rural Ontario Act, an act that will not only change the future course of our small towns, but will contribute to the prosperity and future success of all of Ontario. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall. Now we're going to go to the questions portion of the evening. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to this same question. We're going to start with Ms. Dunlop, and then we'll rotate the order of questions as we go through. So the first question is this. Community support services such as attendant care, homemaking, and meal preparation delivered by not-for-profit organizations are important, practical services that keep people in their homes rather than in expensive institutions. Do you agree with this statement and believe that more public funding should be offered to expand these services? So the statement was community support services such as attendant care, homemaking, and meal preparation delivered by not-for-profit organizations are important, practical services that keep people in their homes rather than in expensive institutions. Agree or not, and what should be done? Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, I do support community supports, and looking at an organization right here in town like Community Living Huronia. I've been on this stage a few times for the local fashion show and supporting that initiative and the fundraising that they do. In the past, in 2009, the Liberal government closed 3 regional centres that include the Orillia HRC, as well as Smith Falls and Chatham. So this was saving the province $100 million, which was the rationale behind shutting down those centres. But in return, that money was supposed to follow those clients into the community in the form of the community resources available, like Community Living Huronia, Simcoe Community Services, Christian Horizons as well. But that money didn't. That money was sucked away for other programs. There are estimating about 20% of that 100 million actually went to the clients. Some of those clients ended up in long-term care as well as in jails, which they don't. They're not criminals. They need the proper supports from our community. So yes, under PC government, I will work to ensure that our most vulnerable people are in society are protected, and we'll look at renewing that budget funding each year. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Van Hoot.
Of course, I believe that especially the elderly stay at home. I use the terminology, which is a social work terminology called aging in place. People don't want to go to long-term care facilities. My father was in a long-term care facility in Orillia and was not happy there, but I couldn't take care of him in my home because I didn't have the supports. I was working. I had 5-year-old twins at the time, and I couldn't take care of him. Interesting this question comes up because yesterday I was in Brecken, and a 92-year-old woman came to the door, and she said, I can't talk long. I'm still trying to dress my 95-year-old husband. He doesn't have a shirt on. And she goes, I'm exhausted. I have no help. My children don't live around here. My husband is very ill, and I have to pay $125 every week for a nonprofit organization to come in so I can go and get groceries to feed myself and him. In this day and age, that's wrong. We need to care for our elderly while they're in their home and when they're their happiest, and the NDP will support community services. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powell.
Every time there is any change to the funding, the services are supposed to be increased in the home care service, and they're not. So even now with the hospitals, they have a home first policy. You go home and wait before you go to long-term care. They have a wait at home policy. We used to call it the go home policy without any service. The community supports are not trained and funded well enough. The increase to the minimum wage may help get a different level of worker, but there are still a lot of problems that need overhauling. The first one is the ministries are siloed. So Community and Social Services, which I think Jill was referring to, Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, and Ministry of Justice or Correctional Services, they do not necessarily talk to each other. They want separate budgets. Within Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, there are siloed services. And if those services cooperated more, and if there were creative solutions, people don't just want to be at home. We serve people with behaviors. We need assisted living, more supportive housing, and more choices.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you very much. That's a great question. Certainly I support that every effort that we do to help those who need a helping hand up in life. You know, when we look at these challenges in our municipalities, you need to think about healthcare for municipalities in a 360 manner. And it really is 2 types of healthcare. There's healthcare and then there's hospital care, and they're 2 separate things. So the healthcare is what happens in the community outside of those 4 walls of Georgian Bay General Hospital. But we need to merge those up. So you take programs like Meals on Wheels that need great support, but then we also recognize that the Georgian Bay General Hospital emergency room gets flooded with people because patients haven't taken their medication. And because they haven't been checked on a daily basis, they end up at our hospital, driving healthcare side up, costs up. So if we can tie in something like Meals on Wheels to actually deliver it, stop by somebody's house, check in on a patient, an elderly patient, let's say, make sure that they're okay, make sure you socially interact with them, and make sure they're taking the medication for the day. That's working together. So again, we got to think about things not in silos, but in that 360 manner that really delivers, the solutions. And that's why you see me champion affordable housing, homelessness, school breakfast programs. So the solution, folks, is to work better together and get the funding in place that makes that happen.
Thank you. The next question, and this time we'll start with Ms. Van Hoot. What does your party plan to do in order to alleviate long wait times at hospitals and for doctors and funding in general in our region for health care? It's a 1-minute question. Ms. Van Hoot.
I'm really proud to report our platform on ending hallway medicine. It's one of our strongest frameworks. And what we want to do is we need to increase funding to hospitals, and we will do that immediately upon our election of 5.3%. It's not the magical answer initially, but at least it will open up some more beds. Aurelia Soldiers Memorial's had 35 beds closed in the last few years, and only 5 have opened with the last thrust of Liberal money before the election. So we want to open more beds, but we also want to put money back into the community. How will we do that? We need to look at shorter surgery time waits and also doctor recruitment and developing residencies. We need more doctors in the north, and how we do that is we encourage students and perhaps in the form of student loans and forgiveness of student loans to get doctors here in the region where we need them and provide the best care that we can for the residents of Simcoe North. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powell, same question.
So it was to alleviate long wait times at hospitals and ERs and with doctors?
It says, in order to alleviate long wait times at hospitals and for doctors and funding in general in our region for healthcare.
So the first thing I would have to say, there are some ways to alleviate the wait times, meaning the numbers that are either waiting for a bed or going to the ER. If we had nurse-led clinics, more nurse practitioner or nurse-led clinics, if we had a paramedic system where the paramedics would do household wellness checks and provide some service at home. And the hospital's funding is different for small hospitals than it is for large ones. So our hospitals are at a disadvantage because they can't be as efficient in a medium-sized hospital as a large hospital in Toronto. So quite often when they're told they're over budget, they're actually at the budget they should be for what they can provide, at GBGH. So there are a lot of solutions to reducing the wait time: pharmacare and dental care, mental health, improving mental health, because a lot of people who show up at the ER door have mental health issues, and all of those should be looked at in a structured, complex view, not siloed.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you very much. That goes back to my opening comments about small town rural Ontario needing a different model. We can't fund our hospitals and our schools the same way you fund the hospitals and schools in the big cities of Toronto. It just doesn't work. We need a different model. Small town rural Ontario needs a champion of that cause to deliver that model to our areas. I look at physician recruitment. Physician recruitment in our area survives on golf tournaments and charitable donations and energies. We need to fund that. If we're serious about recruiting physicians, then properly fund that effort. Properly put the money in place that dedicates a team to deliver to the need of the community. So if we continue on the same path, we end up with the same result. We have to think differently. We have to behave differently. If I look at some of the challenges that we have up here in terms of the medium-sized hospital, we fought to keep colonoscopy in our room. I remember being at the Midland Arena, and there were 700 people in that room. We were fighting to keep ophthalmology and colonoscopy in our area. We fought for that. We stomped our feet, and 15,000 of us rose up and said, we need to keep that here. We need that voice to continue, and I deliver that voice for Queen's Park on your behalf.
Thank you. Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you. I see the three different parts to that question. The first one being alleviating wait times in hospitals, and my government is dedicated to putting an end to hallway health care by investing in 15,000 new long-term care beds in 5 years and 30,000 over 10 years. So that will alleviate the bottleneck right now currently happening with people who are taking up alternative level of care beds who have nowhere else to go in the hospital or into to long-term care or elsewise. The other piece is to the increase in the doctors as well. So we need to respect our doctors in Ontario. The doctors have been without a contract for 5 years now. We need to also look at increasing the residency rates, which were decreased by the Liberal government, to help increase the number of doctors available. Also, the other key piece, and Jerry was mentioning that too, is keeping the healthcare close to home. We can't be losing our programs to hospitals in Orillia or to the regional centers in RVH. So it's important that your representative is fighting to keep those programs close to home. Not everyone has transportation or the ability to travel to those centers, and I will fight for that.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's that question. The next question, we'll start with Ms. Powell. This is a question, probably the first part of this answer is obvious, but the second part's a bit more interesting. Do you support your party leader, and why?
I absolutely support Mike Schreiner. He is the most respectful, intelligent person with values who represents all the Green Party values. He has never let us down. He is consistent. He has a good history in small business, organic farming. He understands local business. He understands all the issues. And he has a good chance of winning. It's a four-way race in Guelph, and we're looking at Mike Schreiner as being the first Green Party MPP, before me, of course. I will be the second, in Ontario. So we're going to make history, and Mike Schreiner is an incredible leader, and I never have to be embarrassed about anything he says or does.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you very much. No, I'm a big fan of Kathleen Wynne, or I wouldn't be sitting here. I've known Kathleen Wynne since she was the Minister of Education, and we started off our conversation talking about the closure of high schools and PSS. And over the course of those times, I've had conversations with Kathleen Wynne and her ministers. We talked about the high cost of policing, the Georgian Bay water levels, school closures, and I fought and I dug my heels in for our area saying, we need to not do those things in small town rural Ontario. We need to keep those assets here. And over the course of the last 8 years, I can tell you that I've had those conversations with Kathleen, I've had those conversations with her ministers, and we've made change. The OPP building model got lowered to be more equitable. They changed the disaster recovery programs for the water level, so if it happens again, our businesses are better served. So we've had those tough conversations. Through those conversations, she's been a leader. And she's a strong leader today. She stands up for what she believes, and she's gone down a path, and she said, I'm going to do these things. She told us all, when you elect me, here's where we're going, here's where we're going to be dedicated to delivering. She's been dedicated, she hasn't wavered, she's stood tall. And it's not easy to stand tall, I can tell you that. As a mayor or warden, you get pressure, you get pushback, and you get outside resistance. She stood tall, and I'm quite proud of her.
Thank you. Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you for that question. I've been the candidate for the PC party for the past year, and so I have seen a change in leadership, and I was loyal to my leader until there was a change in that time, and I will be loyal to my next leader as well. I've had the opportunity, and many in the crowd have, in the last couple of weeks, had a chance to meet Doug Ford and to have him in our riding. And I must tell you, he's very personable. He took the time to walk around and talk to every person at those events, people who wanted pictures, people who were passing by, excited to see him. He even took the time to talk to 2 teenage boys and explain to them his platform and why they should get involved in a campaign, and how that was the best learning was to be involved at the grassroots level and to see how a campaign works. So I was very proud to walk beside him during that time. And I also look at it as you're voting for your local candidate too. Doug Ford is surrounded by many great candidates across the province, and I'm very excited to be one of those, and working here in Simcoe North for you, and looking forward to serving under Doug Ford as our premier.
Thank you. And Ms. Van Hoot.
I couldn't be more excited than to be able to have the opportunity to work with Andrea Horvath. Andrea is a fighter. She's from Hamilton, grew up there, the daughter of an immigrant, the same as myself. I'm the daughter of an immigrant who came to this country to work hard, and both of us have a connection. I've spent a considerable amount of time with her over the last few years and since the by-election, and we both are interested in making this province better for everyone. We also have candidates across this province. We are actually very pleased that 56% of our NDP candidates in this province are women, a first time in history. Thank you. We are dedicated to helping people. Andrea has been tireless in going to events and rallies and meeting with people, and one of the best days of my life is when she came to my office opening 2 weeks ago on her tour bus, which was coming back from Sudbury, and she brings an energy that is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question will start with Mr. Marshall. This person's not an optimist. With the current campaign being very focused, how will you, as a likely backbencher, keep our region from being forgotten?
Well, I guess if those who know me, I don't plan to be a backbencher. So that's a simple answer to that question. If you look at me, I'm the mayor of the town of Penetanguishene, and from that small town mayor's position, we changed the OPB billing model that they said I couldn't change because I've been there since 1995. I've migrated to be the warden of Simcoe County, elected by 32 of my peers, 32 mayors and deputy mayors who are laser focused on what they want me to deliver. 2 years later, I got a job check. I got a reference check from my council, and they unanimously re-elected me as the warden. I'm the chair of the Western Wardens. Now you're up at another level. So you got 15 wardens, 15 County Simcoe type folks like myself, who are laser focused on 322 municipalities, 3.5 million people, and the economic benefit of southwestern Ontario. And I'm at the top of that. I am the chair of that group. I'm also the chair of the SWIFT Board of Directors, delivering that fiber broadband project from across the province of Ontario. My voice will be heard. My voice is already being heard. When you hear me talk about small town rural Ontario, I've got the OFA on board with 37,000 farming communities that agree small town rural Ontario needs to prosper. The Chamber of Commerce, 60,000 businesses are on side with my plan as well. So I'm there, my voice is being heard, and I'm not at the table yet.
Thank you. Ms. Dunlop?
Of course, I'm going to make sure that our region is not being forgotten. I'm going to be right up there talking skilled trades. I would probably be the only person at Queen's Park with a background from a family of plumbers, and I'm quite proud of that. And I think there's so many opportunities for skilled trades, looking at the journey person ratio, encouraging young people to get involved in skilled trades. And I've been across the region talking to manufacturers, talking to construction workers, and skilled trades is such an opportunity to fill that void. And so I will have a voice at that table working for my area and for all across Ontario. I think it's such a key area that can't be ignored. And I intend on being a key player while I'm there, as well as being a great hands-on MPP for our area as well.
Thank you. Ms. Van Hoot?
I must say that we have a very large region here, and there are diverse issues, but there are also some common theme issues, and they relate to affordability, cost of living, food security, job security, and you need a local candidate who has their finger on the pulse of the people and what they're experiencing every day, not just a selected few. More importantly, I see my role to be able to understand, listen, collaborate with people in the region from various sources, and to take that back to Queen's Park and to stand up in Queen's Park so that they know who Simcoe North is, and that I am able to develop and get bills passed that will benefit everyone across this region. So I have two jobs: getting to know all of you and your issues on a regular basis and taking them back to Parliament to enact. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
Oh, I have a good voice. I don't think will be forgotten if I was your MPP. And as Greens, we are consistent and we influence. We have the opportunity in Simcoe North for a a green economy, which will be good for our environment. There are so much opportunity going to 100% renewable green economy. Our colleges could be training people. As Elizabeth said, we do have to take care of the issues of affordable housing, coming up with creative solutions, more tiny houses, more assisted living, cooperative housing, and seniors, which is my passion. We need to improve the choices for seniors, especially rural Ontario, where housing choices become an issue, and affordability and public transportation, and all of those things are green issues. So there's a lot we can do to make sure that our children are well educated in our colleges and have jobs and stay.
Thank you. I think we're back to starting with Ms. Dunlop as the first answerer of the question. And the question is, what will your party do to bring down the cost of childcare and to fund it?
Great, thank you very much for that question. I'm very excited about this, this specific topic with childcare, because I've followed along with the other parties and what they've been doing too. And I think ours is speaks to how parents feel about childcare and their choice in childcare. My party is looking at a 75% rebate for childcare, and parents have the option to choose the type of care. It's not just a licensed childcare facility, which is not always a great option for rural areas. Parents can choose any type of childcare, whether it's home care, it's babysitting, it's having a nanny, whatever allows the parents to be in the workplace. We also covered the ages 0 to 15. So we're not just looking at that 2.5 to 4 year range, but 0 to 15. So that would also include options like summer programs for children whose parents aren't home, and allows them to work. So I think it's a great option. I'm very excited about it. It targets the low income people as well, and it allows parents the choice in the matter and not government.
Thank you. Ms. Van Hoot?
We have a very solid view and platform on childcare. We are proposing that any family in the province of Ontario that makes under $40,000 a year get free childcare. Under $80,000 a year, $12 a day guaranteed childcare. I need to share this story with you about a woman coming to the door in Aurelia with 2 toddlers around her leg, a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. I can identify having twins. And I said, what's troubling you? And she said, I can't go to work. I have a student loan. I'm an educated woman, and I can't go to work because I can't afford childcare. So we live on my husband's income of $60,000 a year. We pay $2,000 a month to rent this house, and we just got declined at the bank to buy a house that was going to cost us $1,000 because we don't make enough money. How do I see myself out? That's the reality of young families who can't work without childcare. And 75% childcare costs a rebate. You have to have the money up front before you can get a rebate.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Powell?
We do have some actual policies, but beyond the policies, we have, strictly for childcare, there's the bigger issue of income. And our party would certainly phase in and promote a basic income guarantee, a livable income, and that would give people the opportunity, if they chose to stay home those first 2 or 3 years rather than working, so that they could afford to look after their children. And for those people who want to pursue their careers or stay at work or not lose opportunity, we'd phase in funding for a comprehensive program for early childhood education and care to support free daycare for working parents with children under age 3, support for stay-at-home parents and additional ECE support, and provide incentives to offset the capital costs for businesses to set up on-site daycare with hours matching the working hours of the business. So people, young, especially single mothers or young mothers, don't have to drive all over town to drop off kids and then still get to work.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you very much for the question. So from a Liberal perspective, we're actually free daycare from 2.5 to full day kindergarten. So from 2.5 years of age till you get into kindergarten, that program's in place. That's a $2.2 billion investment over 3 years. It'll save our families some $17,000 over that course of that time. We're also looking at the early childhood educators and making sure we're compensating those folks with more money to make sure that we keep them in the system, keep them trained, and keep them properly compensated. And I agree with Valerie that the minimum wage income and basic income pilots are a key part of this component as well. You know, for families to get back into the workforce, for a parent to get back into the workforce, you know, and having that free childcare, knowing that their child is safe and sound, allows them to re-enter that workforce in a very comfortable manner, and that allows them to generate more family revenue that's often required for them. We're also investing $40 million to support childcare programs in our First Nation communities as well. So we're on the case, we're looking at it. Disturbing for me, though, was Doug Ford had, you know, his quote was, "Why are the Liberals spending money on children that aren't born yet?" You need to resonate that for a second. We're in the game, we're on the case, we're thinking for the future.
Thank you. This question starting with Ms. Van Hoot, very substantive question. Hydro rates and infrastructure are a disaster in Ontario, both business and residential. How will you solve this problem without increasing taxation or subsidizing hydro rates out of our own tax dollars? Ms. Van Hoot.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my opening statements, the Hydro One issue is very important to us. Andrea Horwath has been standing up in the legislature, screaming, yelling for years about Hydro One. They own 60%. That should have never happened. We were not consulted by the Liberal government when it was sold off, and it was started by the PC government under Mike Harris. That was our asset, and it sold. Now we're dealing with the implications and ramifications of a corporation running a company that is a basic need for all of Ontarians. We plan on purchasing it back by 2028. How are we going to do it? Right now, we receive 40% dividends from Hydro One as our ownership, and we're going to slowly purchase shares until we have full ownership. The dividends from that 40% can actually reduce hydro costs by 30% in the meantime. That's how much money that system makes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powell.
So hydro rates, first of all, we need to reduce the amount of hydro that we use, and that's already going down across the province, so we aren't using as much hydro each year. And the first thing we would do is stop the Pickering contract renewal. Nuclear energy, the plants that we have, the one is inefficient, and it's going to be $38 billion, I think. The cost will be a 30-year contract, and as electricity costs go down, that will be a wasted investment in Pickering. We can bring in hydro from Quebec for a third to half the price of what we're paying now to produce it, and that's Quebec and Labrador are selling, and Manitoba, I think, are already selling hydro to some of the states. And the excess hydro that we produce that we can't ramp down our nuclear plants, we're selling at a discount to the states. So there are a lot of ways we can cut our hydro in half.
Thank you very much. Mr. Marshall.
Thank you for that question as well. You have to reflect back. So the cost of the hydro is investment back into the grid. And you got to remember when the Liberals came into power in 2003, in August 2003, our whole province went black under the PC government. We lost the grid. We lost power for 4 days in the province of Ontario. So the Liberals came in and they inherited a grid that needed to be invested in. So that investment, of course, cost money. One of the reasons it wasn't invested in before is, previous governments, which includes the PCs, the NDP, and the Liberals before, didn't invest in the grid because they're worried about the political backlash of raising hydro rates in a political climate. So that was part of the challenge. So the Liberals stepped up and they've got on that. But my mind goes to solve the problem. To solve the problem is we need to invest in smart people and smart technology. If you look at the town of Penetanguishene, half our town right now is backup powered by what's called a microgrid. And that microgrid is battery powered, that's charged off the grid, off solar, off wind, off wave, off water. When that technology gets proven, and it's being proven over in 17 islands off the coast of Korea, we won't need the hydro lines coming from Penetanguishene to Victoria Harbour. Investing in smart people and smart solutions is where we've got to head. Get away from the grid, think differently, invest smarter, and invest in smart people to get this done.
Thank you. And Ms. Dunlop?
Thank you for that question. Yes, hydro rates are definitely the number one thing I hear, going door to door and meeting with people. Under Jerry's Liberal government, the hydro rates have tripled over that time, and the average household pays $1,000 a year in hydro rates. So right now, seniors, small businesses, and families are paying for hidden expenses. So my government is looking at decreasing hydro rates by 12%, and we will do that by returning all Hydro One dividends to hydro customers, and this will be a savings of $70 a year on your hydro bill. Stop the practice of bearing the cost of conservation programs. So right now, these programs that are available are actually, you're already paying for them. So they're not just some new money that's coming to you, you're already paying for them. That'd be a savings of $43 a year on your hydro bill. And we'll also stop signing green energy contracts. We overpaid $9.2 billion for these contracts. So this will save another $60, which will result in $173 a year back in your pocket. And Valerie hates when I say back in your pocket, but I look at it as back into the economy. When there's money in our pockets, we're back out there spending it. And I want money in my pockets, and I want money in my children's pockets as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question, and this will be we'll be starting with Ms. Powell on this one. What will your party do to enhance the learning opportunities for Indigenous youth and for the increase in awareness of Indigenous culture by non-Indigenous students?
I would have to flip through my book to find the correct answers, but since our value is respect for diversity, and since we're deeply connected with most of our Native groups with all our consultations, I'm confident that within those policies, we would correct the inequity in the subsidies for schools on reservation versus other schools, the inequities in most of the funding. And the other one was enhancing learning about Indigenous peoples. I don't think we have a policy on that, but I would certainly I would certainly take that as a recommendation to something that we should obviously do. And I don't know the high school or or elementary school curriculum to know what is already used. Sorry, I don't have the perfect answer there.
Thank you.
My apologies to our Native engaged citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Marshall?
I think we need to follow along. So the Liberal government has a Ministry of Indigenous Affairs, and that's David Zimmer. And when you talk to our First Nations communities from one end of this province to the other, that ministry's done great work. Our First Nation partners are invested in that conversation and quite happy with the relationship with David and his team brought to the table. And I can tell you, when I've been to a couple of conferences when David's staff are speaking, they're absolutely brilliant. They're on top of the cases, and the respect between the two nations are critical. And you saw the protocol agreement here yesterday signed in Midland. And we need to do more of those things. That we need to understand that this is a nation-to-nation conversation. And so we need to have the rules of engagement in place that both communities, both nations understand and move forward in a respectful manner that delivers the wants and needs of both communities. And so we need to carry on that path. I mean, that great work started here in the town of Midland. It's starting with the province of Ontario with Minister Zimmer. And my intention is to carry on those type of conversations and support that type of undertaking, because it's critical for all of us to understand the relationship and the meaningful relationship that benefits one and all.
Thank you. Ms. Dunlop?
Thank you very much for your question. It's very interesting. In our riding here, Simcoe North, we actually have two First Nations group, the Rama and also Bosley Island. And I think it's fantastic for us to be working together. The piece about enhancing learning about Indigenous peoples from non-Indigenous people, I believe that is a call to action in the Truth and Reconciliation Agreement. And I know with my work at Georgia College and what we're doing there, all the campuses have an Indigenous resource center that is open to all students. And it's a fantastic area for students to go, and the Indigenous Center puts on different potluck meals and things, invites all the students to come into that learning area. So I know that the colleges are doing that. I've talked to Lakehead, they're working at that as well. They're actually looking to some of the initiatives that Georgian College is doing. And my daughters are in high school, so I see the work that they're doing in the high schools too. So they're following those calls to action. And I really see it's the Indigenous and non-Indigenous youth working together who are making those calls to action come to life. And I see the artwork and things going on. So I think it's about all of us coming to the table, and respect for everyone. Thank you.
Ms. Van Hoot.
The NDP party supports the Truth and Reconciliation Agreement. What we want to see happen, the question was about learning opportunities, if I'm not mistaken, for Indigenous. In order for Indigenous people, Indigenous children to learn, they need to have proper housing. They need to have food security, and they need to have clean water. And one of the things that we are most adamant about is that the water issues across this province need to be fixed, because they can be fixed. They're just not being fixed, and that bill will go to Mr. Trudeau in Ottawa. We need to move forward. The youth, both First Nations and Métis youth, deserve well-built schools, a curriculum that reflects their cultural values and beliefs, and support from our community that they continue with that culture and educate all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last question before we get to the wind-up, starting now with Mr. Marshall. Will your party commit to continuing the Ministry of the Status of Women on as a separate full ministry?
Absolutely. That's a fantastic ministry, and they've done great work. And there wouldn't be a moment's hesitation, I think, by the Premier, I can speak on her behalf, and all the caucus members, that is absolutely a critical undertaking, and one that we're quite proud of. And so the answer to that question is simply yes, absolutely yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dunlop.
Thank you very much for the question. I can't say for sure, because I don't know. What I do know is currently there are so many ministries at Queen's Park that there's not enough parliamentary assistance to go around for all those different ministries. I think it is very important. I think I would be would definitely support keeping that ministry. I look at our candidate caucus right now, and we have many women, many ethnic groups, different ages, so I believe it is very important to continue with that, and I would support it.
Thank you. Ms. Van Hoot?
Yes, I support a ministry for the status of women. As I mentioned earlier, our NDP MPPs across this province, 56% are women, and women of color and diversity. And I couldn't be more proud, because that is the Canadian landscape. Women's issues continue to need to be addressed, and our problems. We still have continue to have violence against women. The murdered and Indigenous women issue still has to be addressed. There are so many ways that women can contribute back to the community, but are marginalized and oppressed by policies and legislation that exist that don't promote their best interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Powell?
Absolutely. I would hope that in the future we wouldn't need a ministry for the status of women, because equality would be recognized, but at the moment it isn't. Within the Green Party, we have 52% female candidates, and we noticed with the last federal Conservative leadership that a lot of programs that would help women, like shelters and women's programs, were cut. I would fear that, and I would hope that we would maintain, until we get equality, a ministry that makes sure that shelters remain open. Too bad they're needed as also. That policies that help women, women still tend to be the major care providers for children, although that is changing. The responsibility lies for them, and the policies need to support that. So along with the basic guaranteed income, affordable housing, and many other policies, I'm sure that whoever's within this ministry would ensure that those are maintained.
Thank you. Okay, now we come to the portion of our evening where the candidates are going to give their final comments, final statements, and we'll do it in reverse order from where we started, starting with Mr. Marshall and his comments. Mr. Marshall.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for coming out in a beautiful evening and listening to us chat and our thoughts on different issues. You know, I'm quite proud of Liberal government. I understand the challenges with the hydro. I really do in those rates, and we're addressing those, and I have plans to look to the future, how to do that. But if you look at the economy, we are booming. 800,000 more jobs than pre-recession. We've got a great ministry. We've delivered, caring, affordable projects for our citizens. We're looking after those who need a helping hand up in life. We're delivering affordable housing. We're dealing with homelessness. We're driving business. We're driving the economy. And we're stepping up in all the elements that matter. I do get quite concerned. And, as much as it's nice to be up here with my fellow candidates, I'd rather be up here with Doug Ford. Doug Ford and Ford Nation does not understand small-town rural Ontario. He was going to sacrifice the Greenbelt, for housing to drive more activity into the GTA. He didn't understand immigration. We speak 107 mother tongues in the county of Simcoe. Immigration matters. He didn't understand that $800,000 to Weber Manufacturing was a critical investment to that business that helped save our communities. I look at the Liberal policies and I don't understand them. I look at the statement. We need a better Ontario, their slogan. It says we need a better Simcoe North. We don't need better. Better's worse. Better means you're going to be doing the same things you did yesterday. We need different. We need different funding models. We need different investment in our small-town rural Ontario. We need to look after our needs here in small-town rural Ontario in a manner that is distinct and different. We need a small-town rural Ontario Act, similar to the City of Toronto that has their own act, that it says, hey, Toronto, you're unique and different. Well, the time has come, and the time and place now is for a small-town rural Ontario Act to be different. I don't want better. I want to be different so we drive a future that matters to us and matters to the province of Ontario. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Ms. Powell, your comments?
First, I'd like to thank you, Bill, for moderating, and thank you all for coming to this very important debate in this very important election. It's challenging to discuss complex issues in 1 minute. You sort of get little tidbits. But if we had proportional representation and we could cooperate as a government a little more than the cooperation happens now. Now it tends to be conflictual. We're fighting against each other, looking for wedge issues. If we had a system other than first past the post, which was promised to us federally, which we didn't get, then we would see cooperation rather than competition to guarantee a lot of the issues that you're concerned about. Greens come from all parties. I came from another party 10 years ago, and each of you has the opportunity to look closely at your party's policies and decide whether you still like them and whether they are still the party of the past, of your parents, of the way you voted 10 years ago, and whether you need to rethink how you're going to vote. The status quo needs a watchdog. The Greens' most powerful tool is to be that and to influence the other parties to keep working towards a future vision for this province and this country. Legislation is the best education. Incentives and disincentives change behavior. Global warming is the elephant in the room at all times, and sustainability. But we have to approach it through individual policies, and that's what we do. Your vote matters. Greens are getting elected across Canada, even in our outdated first-past-the-post system. I am ready to be part of this government. I am ready for this leadership opportunity. There is no new money. We need to make the money that we have work and not to leave our children in debt. So on June the 7th, vote Green, vote Valerie Powell.
Thank you. Ms. Van Hoot.
Thank you. Again, I couldn't be more happy to present a platform that all of you can benefit from. We've paid attention to the changing world that we live in, the changing economy. Perhaps 50 years ago, pulling up your bootstraps and getting a good paying job was prosperous and you could eat and pay rent. That is not the case anymore. I grew up, as I told you, with an immigrant father on a farm. I was born on a dairy farm. My father was a sharecropper. He came to this country with no money. Then we did produce, and then we ended up working in tobacco. I picked tobacco for 4 years to get to college. I did hard work. I know hard work. The reality is today that a lot of other people are doing hard work and they can't afford to pay their hydro, buy a house, or eat food. That's not the kind of world I want for anyone. And that's not the kind of world that I want for my children, your grandchildren. We have policies that can help us become a healthy and vibrant economy. Is it going to cost money? Absolutely. We're asking the rich to pay a little bit more. That's what we're asking. $6.1 billion in cuts from the PC party will end up being disastrous for this province, for our healthcare, for our education system, for our transportation system, for our public safety. We cannot privatize services. I do not want to see people lay on gurneys because we have a $1 trillion deficit or however much it is. We have a deficit, we'll deal with it, but not at the expense of the people of Ontario. June 7th, I want to be your next MPP in Toronto, Elizabeth Van Hoot, NDP. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Dunlop, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak here this evening. As a faculty member at Georgian College, I work in the community connecting students and employers. I see the challenges facing employers and grads. Ontario's average income has fallen below the national average for the first time ever. We've lost more than 300,000 manufacturing jobs. There are 380,000 regulations choking businesses, and employers cannot find enough skilled tradespeople. Ontario needs better jobs. The PC plan is to reduce industrial hydro rates, lower corporate tax rates, cut government red tape, and fix our broken skilled trades development system. Strong businesses lead to a strong economy. Let's build an environment that tells entrepreneurs that Ontario is open for business. The Progressive Conservative Party believes you should decide how to spend your money. We will reduce hydro rates by 12%, cut personal income tax for the middle class by 20%, create an Ontario tax credit so that minimum wage workers pay no income tax while protecting their jobs and maintaining hours of work, scrap the current cap-and-trade system and fight the carbon tax, and implement a new child care tax rebate. As a lifelong resident of Simcoe North, I'm appalled that Jerry's Liberal Party approach to rural Ontario has been to shut it down and move it to the city. We've already lost a high school and hospital here in Penetanguishene. This is unacceptable. Our communities support a way of life that we treasure, provide peaceful locations for retirement, and house and care for the workers of key sectors of economy. A PC government sees a thriving rural Ontario as essential to a prosperous and sustainable Ontario. Simcoe North needs a representative at Queen's Park promoting the opportunities of our communities. I'm Jill Dunlop, and on June 7th, I'm asking that you support Ontario's recovery and that you support me as your next MPP. Thank you, merci, and miigwech.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming this evening. You only need to watch the news to see how rare a true democracy is. It requires participation. So firstly, let's thank all our candidates for making the sacrifice of running.
Thank you.
And secondly, and just as importantly, please vote. Thank you to the Chamber, Denise, Peter, and Emily, and please drive carefully. Thank you.